BBC News with Sophie Raworth.
More than 100,000 people have now died with coronavirus in the UK since March.
These are human beings. These are people with families. They have lives. They're not just numbers.
I'm left now with a young family who've got no dad.
That was the last time I saw her. And she was so beautiful. She was so pretty.
A candle for every life as the Prime Minister offers his condolences.
I am deeply sorry for every life that has been lost, and of course, as Prime Minister, I take full responsibility for everything that the government has done.
Hospital employment rate rises to its highest. Vaccines the way out. Almost 7 million people. Good evening and welcome to the BBC News at 6. More than 100,000 people in the UK have now died within 28 days of testing positive for COVID-19. Less than a year ago, as the pandemic took hold, the government's chief scientific advisor, Patrick Vallance, said 20,000 deaths would be a good outcome. But within months, we had already passed that number. The vast majority of those who have died were over the age of 75, more than 77,000 people. But this virus has taken young lives too. More than 1,000 were under the age of 45. Behind the numbers, the people and the families still trying to come to terms with what has happened. Our health correspondent, Catherine Burns, has been talking to some of them.
Something really precious has been taken away from me, and it's really hard.
This is a life that's gone, and the impact is huge.
I'm left now with a young family who've got no dad.
My life is destroyed. Everything is gone.
Today we're using candles to represent those who died. One light for every life lost. It started on March the 2nd. The first person to die within 28 days of testing positive for coronavirus. The next day, there were 2 more deaths. In less than 3 weeks, the official death toll was over 450.
You must stay at home.
The Prime Minister announced a national lockdown on March the 23rd. The next day, the official death toll reached 1,000. Richard Nabew died on April the 10th. He was a nurse who worked with elderly people. His daughter Jamie hated not being able to visit him in hospital.
I called him the morning of the day he passed away, and he waved and he said, "Bye, Jamie." And I said, "Bye, Daddy. Speak to you later. I'll call you in the evening." And the evening never came. I never thought he wouldn't come home. Something that I've struggled with is the fact that he was alone, but I find comfort in the fact that every day he knew how loved he was. Yeah. It was the disbelief that this person, my favourite person in the whole world, wasn't here anymore. You haven't had the opportunity to grieve because it feels like the whole world is grieving.
By the time Richard died, the death toll was more than 13,000. But the first wave had peaked. The number of people dying every day began to fall, slowly and gradually. By the start of June, more than 38,000 people had died. In reality, the death toll would have been higher. In the early stages of the pandemic, the figures only included people who tested positive in hospital. Ada Jackson was 90 and had early signs of dementia. But families say she was happy, strong and feisty until COVID came into the care home where she lived.
It started to go from 1 person to 3 people to 5 people. You then started to just think, my goodness, they're not going to be able to stop this. They had the residents locked in their room. I felt helpless, that solitary confinement in the room. I wonder if Ada felt abandoned at that point in time.
Ada died on June the 3rd. She hadn't seen her family since March.
These are human beings. These are people with families. They have lives. They're not just numbers. This is a life that's gone, and the impact is huge.
As summer continued, there was some semblance of normality. Packed beaches, foreign holidays, people were encouraged to eat out, to help out. Every single day, though, there were COVID deaths. The numbers were much lower. On September the 1st, 3 people died. But once again, that number started to climb. There were over 700 deaths in September and more than 5,000 in October. Across the UK, there were new restrictions, but the death rate stayed stubbornly high in November, often with more than 400 people dying a day. Dean Matthews was 42 years old. His wife says he was a big kid who lived for his family. Even when he had to call out an ambulance, she thought he'd be okay.
Just said, see you later. I didn't hug him, I didn't kiss him, just expecting a couple of days in hospital.
I sent him a selfie, and then he said, there she is, my gorgeous girl. And I think that was the last time I really spoke to him. That was it really, wasn't it?
Dean died within 18 days of getting a tickly cough. He had 5 children. The youngest is just 7.
He keeps saying, like, Mum, my head can't understand, like, why he's not coming back, sort of thing. We're still at the point where we kind of struggle to think, like, why Dean?
Around a month before Christmas, we were told that we'd be able to have festive bubbles, but the increase in deaths was still speeding up. By December the 12th, COVID had claimed more than 65,000 lives.
Mom, happy birthday to you.
Including 50-year-old Midula Sarwar. She and her husband both caught COVID at the same time.
The day that Mum went into the ICU, so the day that Mum went on a ventilator, Dad was also admitted.
So my wife is there in the same building, in another floor, and she was just fighting for her life.
And you think of all the things. I'm okay. You think of all the things that you're gonna miss.
Sarwar recovered, but his wife was critically ill for weeks.
I had a diary of every day morning and afternoon. Everything is just written here.
Including the day medics said Sarwar, Rashik and his 14-year-old brother could come and say goodbye.
Doctor was very sorry to say that the time has now come to an end. That was the last time I saw her. And she was so beautiful. She was so pretty. She was so beautiful, the way she was looking when she came to my life 31 years back. So that's the most precious memory I have.
By New Year's Eve, the death toll had reached 76,000. Now it's taken just a few more weeks to get to 100,000. And this is not over yet.
It's a loss that should never have happened. It should never have gotten to that scale.
It's not just 100,000 people, it's 100,000 people whose families are going to miss them for the rest of their lives.
The relatives of just a handful of those who have lost their lives to COVID since March last year. People who died within 28 days of a positive COVID-19 test, and that is the second highest daily death toll so far. On average, in the past week, 1,242 deaths were announced every day, and it takes the total number of UK deaths to 100,162, the highest in Europe and the 5th highest in the world, to more than 6.8 million. Castle. Since then, almost 250,000 people have been admitted to hospital.
Then she was struck by COVID. She was keen to get this message across.
Just wear your mask and wash your hands. That's all it is, isn't it? That's all they've got to do.
Barbara died yesterday. Her family wanted us to use her interview to warn of the serious consequences of COVID.
Well, the Prime Minister says he is deeply sorry for every life that has been lost.
Coronavirus in the UK.
Then a horrible and familiar rhythm.
759 have
5,300, 16,006.
39,728 have now died.
The soundtrack of a crisis, nearly a year in the making. A terrible crescendo towards today.
Now, today's death toll of more than 100,000 people means the UK has the highest in Europe and the 5th highest in the world. This map shows the areas that have been worst affected.
It's not just 100,000 people, it's 100,000 people whose families are going to miss them for the rest of their lives.